The subject of this tutorial is validating video files for use in Alegion Control. Now, one of the great things about Alegion Control is it allows you to annotate video files as is. There's no pre-processing required either by you or by our backend systems. Nothing that takes time to kind of decompose the video into frames or anything like that. We just stream the video and you can annotate it straight from the file that you have. However, we do require that the video file meet some basic requirements. Now, one of those you can see here in the dialog where you add assets, and you may have seen this covered in one of our other tutorials. So one of the things that is required is that the video file have a constant frame rate, and that when you create the asset, you enter that frame rate accurately. So one of the things we try to do when you upload assets is we estimate the FPS and we alert you if the FPS, if there's some kind of discrepancy, we let you know. And that's maybe a clue that, since they don't match, you might want to double check it. But there's some other things that you may want to check as well. So video files, as we receive them, can have other kinds of errors. They can be missing frames. They can have excessive bit rate. There can be other kinds of errors when the video files are decoded and played. They could be variable frame rate. So we cannot annotate variable frame rate files. So it's good to check for these other things for the purposes of annotating and control. Kind of also good to get some insight into the quality of your video files. So this might give you some insight into problems that you might have in other downstream processes if you are using those files to generate training data. So we have another tool. It's this command line validator. And this is a little downloadable console app. And you can just run it in batch mode on your video files. And what it'll do is give you a report basically kind of on the health of these video files. So it'll tell you which ones are free of issues that would cause annotation errors, and it'll also tell you which ones have issues, and then it will give you some Ffmpeg commands you can use to remediate those problems. And we highly recommend that you use this validator. You just run it, and hopefully everything's all clear, and you just go. But it will alert you to issues. And again, you can run it in batch mode. So if you have 1,000 videos, you can just set this thing loose and get a full report and be assured that your video files are completely clean. So if you want to use the validator, you just click here. It opens up the Video Validator download page. There are just basically a couple things you need to do. One is you do need to download Ffmpeg. Now, if you're familiar with Ffmpeg, it's the kind of Swiss Army knife of video utilities. Infinitely useful, free to install. Just go ahead and download it and install it for your operating system, and then download the version of our validator tool for your operating system as well. Now, once you've done that, you're going to be ready to go, ready to run the validation. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So here I have my console window open, and here I have a directory in which I've got the validator, and I've got a set of video files. And of these files, 2 of them are bad or have some problems, and the rest of them are good. They're fine. So I'm going to close this window, and then I'm going to run. Let me go ahead and go back to my terminal window, and I'm going to run this command. So I just have the validator in the same directory. So I'm going to go ahead and execute this command. And this is going to take a little while to fire up. It's loading Ffmpeg in the background, and then it's going to generate some results for us. Okay, here it's starting to generate some results for the videos in that directory. It's going to write the results out to some JSON files, but it's also going to give us a report in the console window itself. generating more results, and it should be finishing up here in just a few seconds. Okay, here we have the final results from the analysis, and it's pretty easy to read. So you just have a summary. It processed 6 files. None of them were skipped for any reason. And then ones that are green, these have no issues. So these are ready to go. And you've got full information on the FPS, the number of frames and the duration. Here we have one that's out quite a few decimal places. When you enter the frame rate, when you upload it as an asset, you just need 2 places past the decimal. Here are 2 that failed testing. So Security Cam 2 and this other lab video. And we basically list out in this summary the criterion we're looking for. So excessive bitrate, no, that was false. Missing frames, true. Yes, so it is missing frames. Now, variable frame rate, yes, also true. So this one has a variable frame rate and no decoder errors. Then we have this other one, this lab video. This one does have excessive bitrate. It does have missing frames. Oops, sorry, it does not have missing frames. That's false. It is variable frame rate, and it's got some decoder errors. And that's evident from what we saw in these 2 videos as well. Now, the last section here is you've got 2 sets of commands, one for each video, and each set of commands, so here we have the one for the security cam video, each set of commands has remediation commands, Ffmpeg commands that perform the remediation on that file. So you could just run these commands. You've already got Ffmpeg installed, so you can just run these commands and it will perform that remediation for you. And then when that remediation is run, it will output a new video file that has those problems resolved. Now, the last thing you need to keep in mind is that if your video file was, like, for example, missing frames, or if it had a variable frame rate and we set the frame rate to a constant frame rate like 25, that's actually going to fix the video file, but it's also going to change the file somewhat. So if you had missing file or missing frames and we take those out, the frame count's going to be different. Also, if we needed to set a constant frame rate, if you had a variable frame rate file and now it's constant frame rate, that file is going to play differently than the original file that you had. So that new file, the one that's been remediated, needs to be your reference file. That is the file for which the frames will match the annotations that you create in Control. But that's all you need to do, and that new reference file is going to be in better shape anyway, because those issues that were present for annotating in Control, like missing frames or encoder errors or variable frame rate issues, those might cause problems with other tooling that you're using as well. So that new reference file is a good thing to go with and use anyway. So anyway, that's a summary of video validation, and if you have any questions about using this tool, feel free to contact Alegion support.